There is a lot of buzz right now around Dove Valley as the Denver Broncos report back to the practice field. Nathaniel Hackett, what is his message to this Broncos football team? There's 3 rules he expects them to follow, plus Russell Wilson looking towards restoring the winning tradition here in Denver. We react to that and much more on today's brand new episode, Locked on Broncos.
You are Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, Broncos country? Welcome back into a brand new episode of Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast here on the Locked on NFL Network, your team every day from the South Stands to the end zone. I'm your host, as always, Cody Roark, joined alongside by my co-host, Sayre Bedinger. Both of us, we cover the Denver Broncos for the Locked on Network and 9 News. Broncos country, thank you so much for making Locked on Broncos your first listen of the day every single day. Whether you listen free and available everywhere you get your podcast in audio format, or whether you're watching us here on YouTube, make sure you do us a favor, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Follow us along in your favorite podcasting provider, and let's ride, Broncos country. Sayre, my friend, hey, great to talk Broncos football. Players back on the field for voluntary workouts and OTAs. This is the exciting time of the year. I mean, look, we have the NFL draft this week, but for Denver, they're practicing. They're installing. They're going through the new era here with Nathaniel Hackett, this new offense with Russell Wilson. I tell you what, we got a lot out of yesterday's festivities here for this Broncos football team, and even more to build on the rest of the week.
Well, and of course, Cody, we only focus on the hardest hitting issues here. So, man, there's a lot to take away from this initial OTA, the voluntary OTAs. I mean, we're talking about Russell Wilson being out there at practice on the field. We're talking about installing the scheme. We're talking about new pieces on both sides of the ball. And the number one story to me, Cody, jersey number changes. That's my thing, man. I love it.
No, people love jersey changes, ironically enough, because, look, hey, some people are preparing to buy jerseys of some of the new additions, and I think really that's one of the bigger ones. And some of the veteran players that are on this team, jersey numbers are important. So, Broncos country, we're going to cover that hard-hitting news here first here. Returning players that were on the roster last year. Ronald Darby changing numbers, going from number 21 to number 23. A little bit of an interesting move. I'm not sure why, not sure the reasoning on it, but I guess it makes sense there. It's an open number that was available for him to do. There is a new player that is taking over number 21, and that is K'Wan Williams, a new addition they picked up from the San Francisco 49ers. Deshaun Williams goes to 99 from jersey number 90. Travis Fulgham, wow, what a name there, was on the practice squad. He gets number 15, which, has been worn by some pretty interesting Broncos over history, more notably Brandon Marshall. There's a multitude of other guys there that have come in and wore number 15 as well. But, outside of that, though, Sayre.
Mark Dell. Yeah, he was a fit. Mark Dell was a 15, wasn't he, Cody? Case Cookus.
I believe he was. Yes.
Yeah.
And legendary Case Cookus.
Legendary, yeah.
He's lighting it up right now, I think, in the USFL, if I'm not mistaken. He's not even starting. He's a backup quarterback there. So it's like, the hype was real at one point here for Broncos country. But everyone wants to know, what jersey number is Russell Wilson going to be wearing in 2022? Well, hey, number 3, same as always. And look, Sayre, for your son, he's holding up, if you're listening on this podcast version, he's holding up a Color Rush jersey that he received for his son. Obviously, a really cool addition there. Number 3 to be expected. Randy Gregory, though, pass rusher wearing number 5. I kind of like this. I want to see more edge rushers wearing those single digits. He's going to wear number 5. Now, Nathaniel Hackett provided a little bit of an update on him. Wouldn't really give a timeline as to when he may be back or if he'll even be ready for the start of training camp after undergoing arthroscopic shoulder surgery. That right there was a little interesting, though, Sayre.
I don't love it. I mean, I'll say that much. I don't love it. I mean, you want all these guys to be ready for training camp. Yes, we get it. Randy Gregory has kind of proven himself as a regular season NFL player up to this point, even though it's been kind of sparse, a little bit limited here or there. But on the jersey number thing, man, I hope quarterbacks are having nightmares, Cody, all season long about the number 5. Like with Bradley Chubb,
Tom Brady?
55. Yeah, Tom Brady. I mean, my gosh. Yeah, exactly.
He hated it.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that would be just absolutely awesome for Tom Brady and others to have nightmares about it, because, like, with Bradley Chubb coming off one side, he's 55, and you got Randy Gregory coming from the other side, he's just rocking number 5, and then Baron Browning, he's 53, right? So, I mean, you got 5s all over the place just terrorizing quarterbacks. I hope they have nightmares about that number, but man, it's kind of interesting to see what these new players pick and things like that. Alex Singleton, the free agent signing, wearing number 49. Billy Turner, who wore, I believe, 77 before Cody with the Denver Broncos, now wearing number 57 because Quinn Miners wears 77, and then DJ Jones on the D line, he's going to be wearing 97. So I think, to me, the biggest difference here is obviously the Ronald Darby switch. I mean, like you said, kind of odd. He's worn 23 before with other teams that he's been with, but it feels like 21 is kind of just like a cool DB number, like Deion Sanders, Aqib Talib. Like, you think of some great 21s throughout history. There's some really good ones in football. So I don't know. I mean, I don't hate the switch. 23 is it's the GOAT number, right? Michael Jordan. So I'm here for it, but I definitely don't love the update on Randy Gregory. I mean, all the fun talking about numbers aside, like the Randy Gregory thing that they kind of slipped in there, you don't love to hear that. You would have loved to have heard, oh yeah, I mean, he'll be ready for training camp. It was no big deal, but to hear them say, kind of maybe not, I don't know.
No, we didn't get that, obviously, from Nathaniel Hackett. And I think, obviously, a good job there because really a lot of the times the medical staff will be completely in charge of that. So for Hackett, probably not wanting to speak without having that accurate information or a reliable answer. And I think also just due to respecting the player's timeline, I know that the expectation, Randy Gregory will be ready for the start of the regular season, which I do think matters. Training camp is important, but he is there. He's getting mental reps while he can't physically participate. So that'll be an important notion in his recovery. I'm not sure. Did Baron Browning change his number? Because I know he was wearing 56 last year.
You're right.
Did he change it?
53 is Jonathan Cooper. You're right. Good call on that,
there we
Cody,
go.
because I totally forgot about that. Yeah, so we got Cooper as well, 53, Baron Browning, 56. No, you're right about that. Absolutely.
There we go. And then Malik Reed, 59. Like, you got a lot of 50s in the pass rusher position there for this Broncos football team. And obviously, if you were looking to purchase a jersey of one of these new additions, now you have the accurate information as to who is wearing what, which new Broncos are wearing what jersey here in 2022. But you know what? The real exciting part about this episode is that we get to talk about Nathaniel Hackett's press conference after the Broncos held their first day of voluntary OTA practice at the UCL Training Center in Inglewood, Colorado. What were his takeaways and what was his message to the team? What are the 3 rules that he expects from Broncos players and coaches in that locker room? We get to that coming up here in just a moment. But before we do that, let me tell you about one of the sponsors of today's episode of the show. It's a good friends of their Athletic Greens, and I take AG1 every single day. I wake up first thing in the morning with an empty stomach. I fill up my AG1 cup that they sent over with 12 ounces of ice cold water. I go into the fridge and I get 1 scoop of Athletic Greens that contains 75 important vitamins and minerals that's essential for focus, your gut health, and just feeling good in general. And right now it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition with AG1. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every single day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase today. And all you have to do is go to athleticgreens.com/NFL Network. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/NFL Network to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance with AG1. And our good friends over there, betonline.net. And betonline.net is your #1 source for all your betting stats and sports information. And you can find all the latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's basketball playoffs and the start of the Major League Baseball season. And BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more, all in one place. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to sign up to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline.net. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Sayre, let's get into some of our takeaways from hearing Nathaniel Hackett, Broncos head coach, speaking to the media yesterday following day 1 of OTA practice at the UCL Training Center in Inglewood, Colorado. First off, I think, we hear this word in Dove Valley a lot. There's a lot of energy. There's a lot of juice in the building. I think a lot of that, players are excited, but Nathaniel Hackett is really providing a lot of hype, providing a lot of that juice, and he's just always ready to go. And Sayre, I know it's early on in the season, and I know that you and I have been covering this team for so long. We've been seeing all these different coaches come in. We saw Vance Joseph. We saw the Brock Olivos come in, the 22 Janos, the level of excitement and enthusiasm he had. But ultimately, these coaches are based on the one area, and that's wins and losses in the National Football League. But I tell you what, having a coach like Nathaniel Hackett, I just get the vibe as a former player, Sayre. listen to how he speaks about the game, listen to how he speaks about players, the locker room, the culture that he wants to build. Like, it has me excited. Like, I would have loved to play for a coach like that. I had some coaches who were like Nathaniel Hackett, but it's a rarity that you see in today's day and age, a coach who has that upbeat energy that also cares about his players, especially in the brutal business that is the National Football League. I loved a lot on what Nathaniel Hackett had said, but one thing that stood out to me, he has trust in his coaches. Like, right now, his focus is on helping the offense get everything going, working with Justin Outen, installing things for Russell Wilson and this offensive team, because they said they have a very, very large playbook, and they're going to have to go through a lot of the groundwork, the foundational stuff right now in order to get to where they want to be. But he trusts his coaches to do their job. He trusts Coach Ejiro Evero on the other side of the ball to be able to get those guys in place, the defensive assistant coaches. He's not a controller, which, in Vic Fangio, everyone kind of walked around like it was a very tight ship in a sense, like, hey, Coach Vic's around. We can't be loose. We can't have fun. And that's something I did notice while covering training camp practices. I noticed that with Vic. Players are very open now, and there's a lot to like about Nathaniel Hackett.
There's a lot to like about him, Cody, and I think it's even getting overhyped a bit, like the energy and the positivity that he brings to the table, and a bit underhyped just how wise and intelligent of a football mind he is. And Russell Wilson really spoke to that and talked about just the fact that, he personally is just diving into the playbook, and I think he said obsessing over learning it, which is really awesome. Like you said, it's a big playbook, and that bleeds out to other players on the roster. So other players are going to want to be on the same page because, well, they're going to want to get some playing time. So I love that you mentioned his willingness to empower as well. Like, leadership without empowering, that's not leadership. So you got to empower your people to do what they're supposed to do or what they're hired to do. Otherwise, like you said, you just become kind of a control freak, and that's not a healthy environment. And I think absolutely Nathaniel Hackett brings that energy to the table. And that had to, that translated to when he talked about KJ Hamler. On a previous episode that we did, we talked about KJ Hamler's ahead of schedule. Well, the Broncos posted a video of him out there moving around right, left really quickly. And obviously Nathaniel Hackett had some really good things to say about what he saw from him. He said, it's unbelievable. There's one time we had a RVA and he ran an out route over there. I just kind of nodded my head saying, wow, it's just great to see all the guys. Everybody's working so hard. They all want to be out on the field. You appreciate that as a coach. They want to contribute to the team. And that's huge for KJ Hamler as he goes about this offseason. He's got to show that he can contribute, because over 2 years in the NFL and dating back to his time at Penn State, that has been an issue. And we know that KJ Hamler brings the energy, Cody. I think that's really showing with different players on the roster, the new coaching staff, Russell Wilson. And another thing about practice now that's back that I think everybody's going to love is also bringing the energy level up.
Yeah, well, how do you do that? You got to have music playing too, and that was such a stark difference. Like, for me, I understood when Vic Fangio's like, we don't want music there. We want to just focus on doing what we're doing. I understood that. But I also hey, music doesn't hurt. And I think Nathaniel Hackett actually made a really great justification for having music. Now, here's what he said here. He says, that's the only thing I know. I like the music. If I don't have it, I'll start freaking out. That right there already buys over people, especially with the Vic Fangio area. The players that were there during Vic's time, Vic was very stern on all that stuff there. So now you have Hackett embracing it. You always want to hear that stuff. It keeps, I feel like on game day, it's pretty loud. There's a lot of things going on. I think distractions to a certain extent are good. Different music, different people saying things. That's how it is on game days. And you want to create that environment as much as possible. Being able to do that is great because, look, you get the buy-in there. Like, I've been to Broncos training camp where there's music with Vance Joseph. Players are live, they're loose, they're having fun. And then, I noticed when it wasn't there, it was almost like, hey, man, practice is it's a tough task to have to get through these summer heat practices in Dove Valley on the berm when it's 105 degrees outside. We want some music at least. I understood that too. As a player, I always loved the music aspect of it. As a coach, I can kind of see it from both sides. There's a time and a place for it. But Nathaniel Hackett doing a lot to buy our team. But there is one thing that Nathaniel Hackett is asking of players and coaches here for the Broncos organization, and this will be the standard here, Sayre. What were his 3 rules that he outlined here for this Broncos football team in 2022 and beyond?
I think they're really great rules. Number 1, be on time. Number 2, team first. Number 3, no excuses. And of course, right now we're still in the honeymoon stage. So I remember back when Vic Fangio was first hired, we thought that his whole death by inches thing, we were putting that on t-shirts, baby.
Yes.
That's how excited we were about that. We're like, okay, the Broncos are not going to die a death by inches under Vic Fangio. That was what we bought into during the honeymoon phase. So be on time, people, be on time and team first, no excuses. Those are the honeymoon phase, top 3 rules right now. So, I mean, we'll see. I mean, you want to be able to hold these guys accountable to that over the course of the season. Of course, the Broncos have a way different infrastructure in place now to be able to implement those 3 things as the top 3 rules of the team. But it'll be interesting to look back on. It's kind of like the same way we did the death by inches thing. How will we look back on these 3 rules from Nathaniel Hackett that he's implementing here at his first team voluntary OTA?
Well, I think the thing with these 3 rules is they're pretty, I think they're important foundational aspects, right? It's not like some catchy, we want to avoid death by inches. This is more like, hey, these are great value operating principles to kind of live your life by. Like, always be on time to everything, which being on time means being early, not showing up exactly on time. Being early is being on time. Being on time means that you're late. There's some wisdom for all you folks out there. Hopefully you could take it. And then team first. It's all about us. It's not about me. And I think there was a great question he was asked, like, how are you embracing, have you ever had that moment sinking in where like, hey, I'm the head coach of the Denver Broncos. And he said, I haven't had that moment yet, but I'm just excited to be out here with all these players, all these coaches. We are excited. He says, it's not about me. It's about all of us in this building. And that right there is super important because this often at times in this industry, it is a me basis, because realistically at the end of the day, these guys are all building their own brand within a team structure. They're becoming an identity, a branch of something else, but it's becoming encompassed in kind of what they do and who they are. And Nathaniel Hackett's all about we, and with this coaching staff, and even mentioning the collaborative relationship with the scouting department and George Paton and these players. This is a different feel in Broncos country. And ultimately, Sayre, as we've talked about here on the show 100 times, it's since the time we've been doing the show, it's important that the win-loss product, the Broncos have to win games in order for it to kind of register and validate with the fans and with other people. Like, we're all excited right now as media members. Broncos fans are excited. But ultimately, it's going to be the win-loss factor that's going to determine the trajectory of maybe how this goes. But maybe not everything is final in year 1 here. You have to give Nathaniel Hackett and the staff some time. But what about Russell Wilson, the newest quarterback here for this Denver Broncos football team? Is he being involved in conversations with George Paton when it comes to maybe some draft decisions, personnel? We get into that and much more coming up here in just a moment. But before we do that, let me tell you about the other sponsor of today's episode, Locked On Broncos. That's our good friends over there, RockAuto.com. And if you need anything for your vehicle, RockAuto.com has everything that you could be looking for your vehicle, whether it's for something that you're working on in the garage or for it's your daily driver that gets you from work from A to B. RockAuto.com has anything that you could be looking for. And you can go to RockAuto.com and you can click on the parts for your vehicle. You can choose based on year, make, model of your car, and you can choose the brand, specifications, and even the price points that you prefer. And prices at RockAuto.com are always reliably low, whether you are a professional or a do-it-yourselfer. Why spend up to 30%, 50%, or 100% more for the same parts at a local chain auto parts store or car dealership when you can get them cheaper at RockAuto.com? So head to RockAuto.com right now to see all the parts available for your car, truck, and write Locked On Broncos in there. How did you hear about us box? So that they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. RockAuto.com. Broncos country, as we get into the fourth quarter action on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in here today. Make sure you smash that like button on YouTube. Make sure you're following or leaving a review if you're listening on your favorite audio podcasting platform. We appreciate your interaction and your support so much. Broncos country, Locked On Broncos. We have you covered every single day with all the Denver Broncos news, content, and coverage that you need. From an objective point of view, you get that here exclusively. Locked On Broncos. Sayre, Russell Wilson, since his introductory press conference, this was the first time we were actually able to have him speak to Broncos media. And I got a special announcement coming up here very soon that I can't wait to share with everybody in Broncos country. Some career-related news here coming up here. But for Russell Wilson, though, Sayre, for him, this is a new stop. It's a new journey for him. And one thing that he's kind of asked for, too, from the Seattle organization is having some input into what's going on. Like, to be able to be asked, like, hey, what do you think about this, Russ? Well, George Paton's already doing that. George Paton's involving Russell Wilson in personnel conversations. And Russ had said, George is always giving me ideas like, hey, what do you think of this guy? Hey, check this guy out. It's great. I love football. I'm passionate about it, and I'm passionate about the game. This is a really cool thing to be able to see George Paton involve Russ in this conversation and some of these topics and maybe even personnel decisions, because I think one thing that Broncos fans may or may not know, and if you're just now finding this out, this is huge. When Russell Wilson is done playing football, he has aspirations of being on the football administrative side of things. And he just recently wrapped up his sports law degree. So, hey, he's putting himself on a path after football to still be involved in the game and make impactful decisions, evaluate rosters in a sense. He's getting that experience here in Denver, which I think is a really cool thing for Broncos country.
It is extremely cool, and it makes you wonder, or if you're a Seahawks fan listening this deep into a Broncos podcast, you may be wondering, well, why was that so hard, for the general manager just to give Russell Wilson some input or say, hey, here's what we're thinking about this prospect. I mean, it's crazy to me that this kind of stuff can't just happen when you have a guy that's as established as Russell Wilson. It's great to see it happening in Denver. I love that. I absolutely love George Paton's collaboration. That predates any of this. So if anybody thinks that George Paton is just kind of changing his ways to accommodate Russell Wilson and sort of kiss up to him in a matter of speaking, he's not doing that. Remember last year, that offseason was all about Vic Fangio and Pat Shurmur and making sure those guys had everything that they wanted in order to try to, utilize the 2021 season to save their jobs. So collaboration is nothing new for George Paton, and I absolutely love it. He's such a great communicator and such a great leader in that regard. And you love to see Russell Wilson getting the opportunity to speak into things. And specifically what I thought was interesting, Cody, you know me, the tea leaf conspirator, I loved what he said when he was asked about this question, because he specifically mentioned wide receivers. And I've been kind of on this train of like, hey, is wide receiver maybe on that, on that spectrum of being the Broncos' top pick? Here's what Russell Wilson said when he was asked about evaluating prospects. He said, I think obviously what you look for is the talent level. If he's a receiver, when you throw it to him, does he catch it? Does he get open? Is he tough? Does he block? Can he do all those different things? Does the guy make the team better? At the end of the day, that's a big part of it. For anyone to come on the football team with such a tremendous team and so much talent, it's hard to make this team. You have to have guys that have that extra tenacity and that ability to really understand the game. So when Russell Wilson is evaluating prospects, he's obviously looking at this in terms of like you're a scout for the team, which is really cool to see. And he brought something brand new to the table, Cody, which I never noticed before. In all the years I've been watching Broncos practice footage and all that stuff, I've never seen a quarterback come out wearing blue pants. We've seen the blue jersey many a time. I've never seen the blue pants with the blue jersey. So Russell Wilson making his mark on the Denver Broncos in ways that I don't even recall Peyton Manning having a substantial input on draft selections, at least not early on, but I'm sure he did in some ways. But it's really cool to see.
No, spot on. It really is there too. And I think an important thing that Broncos fans want to know is, can he help restore the culture of winning here in Denver, which has been a huge part of that. And one thing he said here, says it's been an amazing experience so far. At the end of the day, this is a winning organization. And by standard, he is correct. Like when you look back, the Broncos, so many Super Bowl appearances, 3 Super Bowl championships that they've brought home to Denver in Dove Valley here. And one thing he said is that's one of the reasons why if I was ever going to go anywhere, I had to go somewhere that wanted to win. This is one of those places that definitely wants to do that. And I think a lot of that has been cultivated by George Paton and the moves that they've made this offseason. For George Paton, he gave Vic Fangio, Pat Shurmur every chance as really not a coaching staff that he chose, but one he inherited. And then he said, hey, we're going to let it play out. I'm going to give these guys a chance. It didn't work out. So he goes in and through a thoughtful process when everyone's like, how come the Broncos aren't getting a head coach yet? How come they haven't hired anybody? They hired the first head coach in the cycle, and it took time. And Denver's became a desirable place for coaches to be and for players to be. And that's something that Russell Wilson definitely believes in. It's great seeing him at sporting events, Colorado Rockies games, Denver Nuggets games, courtside with Sayre. Like he's attending these things. He's bought into the culture. And the cool thing is too, look, outside of just him attending a game with Sayre, he's attended games and he's had his Broncos teammates with him up in the stands. They've all rented suites, and George Paton, the coaching staff, they've all rented suites, and they've attended at Ball Arena. That's what you really love. It's not just about, okay, hey, we're going to go to the team facility, we're going to practice. We're going to go be in the public. We're going to be in the public eye. We're going to be part of what's going on here in Denver, Colorado with Colorado sports. And hey, I tell you what, it's an exciting time, Sayre. And I know Broncos country is really excited about that. So Broncos country, Sayre and I, we want to know your thoughts on what Nathaniel Hackett had to say in yesterday's press conference. Russell Wilson, let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below here on YouTube. Make sure you tweet us on Twitter at Cody Roark NFL, at Sayre Bedinger, at Locked On Broncos with your thoughts. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in, making Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day. Every single day, both Sayre Bedinger and myself will be back tomorrow for a brand new episode of the show as the Broncos continue their practice week here. Voluntary OTAs leading up to the NFL draft, where the Broncos will be on the clock on Friday. We'll have you covered on Locked On Broncos all on tomorrow's episode of the show.